The bill arrived in a leather folder at 9:43 p.m., and my daughter Calliope set it on my placemat with the same small, careful motion she had been using since she was 11 years old when she wanted something. Mom, since you're the matriarch. She let the word matriarch float for a second, like a balloon she had practiced releasing. And since this is really your celebration of us, Reagan and I thought it was only right that you handle the bill. Plus, since you got the bonus from the rental property last month, we figured tonight was the right night. I had not gotten a bonus from the rental property last month. The rental property was the small two-bedroom on Hollyhock Street that my late husband Sebastian had left me in 2018, and which I had been managing carefully for 6 years. The rent was $1,900 a month. It had been deposited, as it always was, into my account on the 3rd. There had been no bonus. There had not been a bonus in the entire history of the property. What there had been, 2 weeks earlier, was a conversation. Calliope had called me on a Sunday afternoon and asked, in a voice arranged for the question, "Mom, how is the rental doing? Is it pulling in extra these days?" I had said, "It's pulling in what it pulls in, sweetheart, the same as always." She had said, "Oh, good, I just wondered." She had then converted the "oh, good." I just wondered into a bonus from the rental property in front of her husband, her in-laws, my grandson, and the waitstaff at the restaurant. The number she had given me to handle was the number on a folder I had not yet opened. I opened it. The bill was $4,216. The dinner was a celebration of Calliope and Reagan's 10th wedding anniversary. We were at a tasting menu restaurant called Vega's, on the east side of the city, where the chef came out at the start of the meal to describe a dish involving heirloom carrots and burnt honey. There had been 8 of us at the table: Calliope and Reagan, their son, Cassius, my grandson, 15, Reagan's parents, Wendell and Patrice, Reagan's sister Indigo and her husband Felix, and me. I had been the only one over 65. I had been the only one Calliope had referred to as the matriarch. I was also, I now understood, the only one who had been told in advance that the bill was coming. I looked across the table. Reagan was looking at his wine glass. Patrice was looking at her napkin. Wendell was looking at his phone. Indigo and Felix were murmuring to each other in the low voices people use when they are pretending not to hear what is happening at the next chair. Cassius was looking at his lap. Calliope was looking at me with the small, bright smile she had been practicing on me since 1991. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart." "The bill?" I let the question sit in the air. Then I said, very pleasantly, "Calliope, could you do me a small favor?" "Of course, Mom." "Could you stand up, walk to the front of the restaurant, and ask the maitre d' for a private room or alcove where I can take a phone call? I will be 5 minutes. The bill is not going anywhere. The party is not going anywhere. I just need a small, quiet space." She blinked. "Mum, can't you just—" "Calliope, 5 minutes, a small favor for the matriarch." She stood up. She walked in her cream silk blouse and her practiced posture toward the front of the restaurant. She returned 90 seconds later and said, "There's a small library room near the bar. Esteban said you can use it." "Thank you, sweetheart." I picked up my handbag. I left the leather folder on the placemat. I walked to the library room, which was, indeed, a small alcove with 2 leather chairs and a tall bookshelf and a single brass reading lamp. And I closed the door. I sat in one of the leather chairs. I took out my phone. I called my lawyer. Her name was Eustacia Marlowe. She had been Sebastian's lawyer for 31 years and had been mine since his death. She picked up on the second ring, even though it was a Friday night, because Eustacia had given me her cell phone number the week Sebastian died and had told me, "Catherine, you may call me at any hour for the rest of your life. I owe Sebastian that much, and I will collect on the debt by being useful to you. Catherine." "Eustacia, I need to ask you a question, and I need you to answer it from memory if you can." "Go." "The rental property, Hollyhock Street. I co-purchased it with Sebastian in 1998. It transferred to me on his death in 2018. Is Calliope on the deed in any capacity? A small pause. Catherine, Calliope is not on the deed. She has never been on the deed. Sebastian was emphatic about that in 2017 when we drafted the trust. He told me, and I am quoting because I wrote it down at the time, Eustacia, I do not want my daughter to think of that property as hers until my wife is dead. And I do not want my wife to be pressured into transferring it during her lifetime. Build me a wall. I built him a wall. The wall is on page 11 of the trust agreement. I closed my eyes. Eustacia. Yes. What is on page 11? Page 11 contains a clause specifying that the Hollyhock Street property is held in your sole revocable trust, that no descendant or in-law of the original grantors has any equitable or beneficial interest in the property during your lifetime, and that any attempt by a descendant to claim, encumber, represent, or otherwise treat the property as belonging to them, including in casual conversation with third parties, may be grounds for the trustee to exclude that descendant from all post-mortem. Inheritance of the property's eventual proceeds. I sat very still in the leather chair. Eustacia. Yes. Sebastian wrote that into the trust. He did. He wrote that descendants who represent the property as belonging to them in casual conversation with third parties can be excluded from inheriting it. Yes. Eustacia, tonight at dinner, my daughter told her in-laws and the waitstaff of a tasting menu restaurant that the $4,216 bill should be handled by me because of a bonus from the rental property. There was no bonus. She invented it. She invented it in order to position me as the wealthy matriarch whose role at the table was to fund a celebration of her marriage. A small silence on the line. Then Eustacia said very quietly, Catherine. Yes. Is this the call where I bring out the clause? Eustacia, this is the call where you bring out the clause. Then I am going to need you to do 3 things tonight. First, pay the bill. Pay it with your own card. Do not argue. Do not refuse. Do not embarrass yourself or your grandson at the table. Pay it and leave the restaurant calmly. Second, I need you to forward to me, in writing, what Calliope said in front of the table. Verbatim. Tonight, before you sleep. I will need it for the documentation. Third, I will call you at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we will begin the closing paperwork to remove Calliope from the Trust's contingent beneficiaries. By Monday at 5 p.m., she will not be in the line of inheritance for the Hollyhock Street property. Eustacia. Yes. What about the rest of the estate? Catherine. The rest of the estate is a separate question. You can decide that on Monday. Tonight we are dealing only with Hollyhock Street, because Hollyhock Street is what Calliope chose to lie about. We let the punishment fit the lie. That is good legal practice and better moral practice. I closed my eyes. Eustacia, Sebastian told you to build him a wall. He did, Catherine. How tall did you build it? Catherine, I built him the tallest wall the state of California permits. Tonight, we get to see what is on the other side of it. I hung up. I returned to the table at 9:54 p.m. I had been gone 11 minutes. The bread had been cleared. The waiter had refilled water glasses. Calliope had been watching the door. I sat back down. I picked up the leather folder. I opened it. I removed my credit card from my wallet. My own card, the one with my own name on it. The one Sebastian had insisted I keep in my own name in 2003, when separate cards keep marriages calm, as he had put it, and I placed it inside the folder. I closed the folder. I handed it to the waiter who had been standing politely 2 paces away. Thank you. The tip should be 25% on the pre-tax. Please add it before you run it. Of course, ma'am. He walked away. Calliope smiled across the table. Mom, thank you. This means so much. This is Reagan, and I were just saying earlier this is exactly why we wanted you here tonight. Yes, sweetheart, I imagine it was. Her smile flickered, just slightly. The flicker was the size of a thought that had not yet been allowed to become a sentence. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. I imagine that is exactly why you wanted me here tonight. The phrasing was deliberate. Calliope. I am not in the habit of saying things by accident. Regan looked up from his wineglass. Patrice set down her napkin. Cassius, my grandson, 15, the only one at this table, whose name I would still be writing into my will on Monday morning, looked at me with the expression I had been waiting to see on someone's face all evening. It was the expression of a young person who has just heard an adult woman speak in a register he did not know. Adult women in his family possessed. Calliope laughed, a small, bright laugh. Mum, are you being funny? No, sweetheart. I am not being funny. Funny would have been making a scene about the bonus you invented for the rental property. Funny would have been refusing the bill. Funny would have been embarrassing your in-laws by listing, in front of them, the 17 times in the last 6 years you have referred to my house, my retirement accounts, and my husband's estate as family money. I am not being funny tonight. I am being unusually patient. I want you to remember that. The table had stopped moving. Calliope's face went the blotchy red of a woman who has been described accurately for the first time in front of her husband's parents. Patrice Regan's mother, who had said almost nothing all evening, set down her water glass and said, in a voice I had not heard her use before, "Catherine, I don't think any of us realized." Patrice, it's not your job to apologize for my daughter. It is not even your job to acknowledge what just happened. You may simply sit there and enjoy your decaf, and I will not hold tonight against you. Wendell, the same applies to you. Indigo, Felix, same. Cassius, sweetheart, same. Calliope and Regan are the only 2 people at this table who need to remember tonight, and I would like them to remember it without the rest of you cushioning the memory. The table was perfectly still. Regan opened his mouth. He closed it. He had been opening and closing his mouth for 10 years of marriage, every time Calliope said something cutting to me. And he had not yet learned that you have to make a sound when you open your mouth, or it does not count. I picked up my coffee cup. I drank what was left of it. I am going to leave now. I will not be at brunch tomorrow. I will not be at the anniversary photo session on Sunday. Cassius, Sweet Pea. I will see you Saturday afternoon at my house, if your parents permit it. 3 p.m., front door. We are making cinnamon rolls. The doorman will let you up. Cassius nodded. His eyes were very wet. I stood up. I picked up my handbag. I walked out of Vegas at 10:11 p.m. into the cool October air. I did not look back. I took a taxi home. I did not cry. My hands didn't tremble. I sat at my kitchen table when I got home. I drank a glass of water. I wrote out, in my own neat hand, on a yellow legal pad, the exact words Calliope had said at the table. Since you got the bonus from the rental property last month, we figured tonight was the right night. I underlined bonus from the rental property. I noted the time. I noted the witnesses. I scanned the page on the small printer in Sebastian's old study and emailed it to Eustacia at 11:42 p.m. Then I sat in Sebastian's reading chair, the one I had not let anyone move out of the living room in 6 years, and I let myself remember. Not everything, just the parts I had been training myself not to look at directly for the last 6 years. The summer of 2019, Calliope had called me crying because Regan had lost his job and they could not make the mortgage. I had wired her $18,000. She had thanked me with a card. The card had been signed, Love, the Whitlock family. She had stopped using my surname on cards in 2018, the day after Sebastian died. The Christmas of 2020. Regan had been rehired but had taken a pay cut. Calliope had called to ask if I could help with Cassius's tuition deposit for the spring. The deposit was $2,800. I had paid it. She had not asked again that year. But she had called me in March and mentioned that Cassius's spring break trip with the school was $1,100, and I had paid that too. The summer of 2022. Calliope had called from Patrice's beach house in Carmel and casually mentioned that the rental property on Hollyhock Street must be doing well because of the location, Mom, and had asked whether I had thought about transferring it to her name for tax purposes. I had said no. She had laughed. She had said, "Mom, I'm just thinking about your stress levels." I had said no again. The fall of 2023. Calliope had told me, in front of Reagan's parents at Thanksgiving dinner, that Sebastian had always intended for the Hollyhock Street property to come to her immediately on his death, and that I was being technical about holding it. Sebastian had said no such thing. Sebastian had specifically told Eustacia to build a wall. I had laughed at Thanksgiving. I had laughed, because the alternative was to correct my daughter in front of her in-laws, which Sebastian would have considered the right thing to do, and which I had not yet learned how to do. The spring of 2024. Calliope had begun referring to the property in conversations with her real estate friend, Beatrice, as our family's rental. I knew because Beatrice had mentioned it to me at a charity luncheon. I had laughed. I had laughed. And tonight, at Vegas. Tonight, she had not just referred to the property as hers. She had invented a bonus from it. She had made me a wealthy matriarch in front of her in-laws, and had asked me to pay for her anniversary on the strength of a fiction she had constructed about my money. There comes a moment when a woman has been laughing for 6 years, when her face starts to feel the shape of the laugh from the inside, like a mask molded over time to the contours of someone else's comfort. I felt my face return to its own shape at 12:14 a.m. in Sebastian's reading chair. I went to bed. Eustacia called me at 9:01 a.m. Saturday morning. Catherine. Eustacia. I have your email. The phrasing Calliope used at the table satisfies the threshold for invocation of the clause. Bonus from the rental property is not an idle comment. It is a representation to a third party, in this case the waitstaff and Reagan's parents, that the property is hers in a manner sufficient to be invoiced against. We have grounds. Then we have grounds. Catherine. I want to make sure you understand what we are about to do. This is permanent. Calliope will not inherit Hollyhock Street. The proceeds, on your eventual death, will go to whoever you name as the substitute beneficiary. If you do not name one, they revert to the trust's residual instructions, which currently send them to your grandson Cassius at age 25. I closed my eyes. Eustacia. Yes. Make Cassius the beneficiary. Age 25. Untouchable by his parents. Done. Eustacia. Yes. Sebastian said, build me a wall. He did, Catherine. Sebastian was a quiet man. He did not say things like that often. When he did, it was because he had thought about something for a long time. Catherine. He had thought about Calliope for a long time. I want you to know that. The wall was not a contingency he drafted in case something might happen. It was a contingency he drafted because he had watched something happen for 25 years and he did not want it to continue after he was gone. He told me, in 2017, that Calliope had been manufacturing financial fictions about him since she was 19. He used those words, manufacturing financial fictions. I did not speak for a long moment. Eustacia. Yes. Why did he not tell me? Because, Catherine, Sebastian believed you would resist the truth as long as Calliope was alive to you. He believed you needed to discover it yourself. He told me, in 2017, Eustacia, the wall has to be built quietly. If Catherine knows it exists, she will warn Calliope. If she does not know, she will use it the day Calliope shows her she should. He believed in your judgment, Catherine. He just did not believe in your timing. I sat with that for a long moment. Eustacia. Yes. He was right about both. He usually was. We finished the paperwork by 11:30 a.m. The closing documents would be filed Monday by 9 a.m. By Monday, at 5 p.m., the contingent beneficiary on the Hollyhock Street Trust would be Cassius Whitlock, age 15, with full access at 25. and trusteeship held by Eustatia's firm until that date. Calliope would not be informed of the change. She would discover it only on the day she became entitled to learn which, as the trust was now structured, would be never, because the change took effect during my lifetime and the property would never pass to her at all. Cassius arrived at my apartment at 3 p.m. on Saturday. He had taken 3 buses to get there. He had not asked his parents for a ride. He stood at my door in a hoodie and the careful expression of a 15-year-old who had been told by his mother to be normal at Grandma's house. I opened the door. I hugged him. He held on longer than he usually did. Grandma? Yes, sweet pea. Mom's really mad. I imagine she is. She and Dad were yelling at each other in the kitchen this morning. I imagine they were. Grandma, what happened last night? I made cinnamon rolls with him at my kitchen counter. I taught him to roll the dough on the marble I had been rolling dough on since 1989. He measured the cinnamon. He brushed on the butter. While the rolls rose, I poured him a glass of milk, and I sat down across from him at the kitchen table, and I told him, calmly, exactly what had happened. I told him about the bonus that did not exist. I told him about the rental property. I told him about the wall Sebastian had built in 2017. I told him about the clause and the closing papers, and the fact that, by Monday at 5 p.m., his mother would no longer be the contingent beneficiary of his grandfather's property. I did not tell him that he was now the contingent beneficiary. That would be his to discover when he turned 25. He did not need to carry it any sooner. He listened. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Grandma, was Grandpa angry? Sebastian was never angry, sweet pea. Sebastian was prepared. That is the difference. Angry people break things. Prepared people build walls and wait. He nodded. Grandma, will Mum be okay? Sweet pea, your mother is going to be uncomfortable for a long time. That is not the same as not being okay. Being uncomfortable for a long time is sometimes what people need in order to become okay. I am not punishing your mother. I am simply allowing her, for the first time in her life, to live with the consequence of a sentence she chose to say at a dinner table in front of 7 witnesses. He nodded again. He picked at a piece of cinnamon roll dough on the counter. Grandma? Yes. Saturdays. Can I come every Saturday? Yes, sweet pea. Every Saturday for the rest of my life. Front door. 3 p.m. The doorman has been instructed. Grandma? Yes. Will Mom let me? I looked at him across the kitchen table. Cassius, your mother is, this week, going to discover that some of the small powers she believed she had over the people in this family were not actually hers to exercise. One of those powers was deciding whether her son could visit his grandmother. If she tries to prevent you from coming, you will tell her, calmly, that you are coming anyway. You are 15. You can take 3 buses. You have demonstrated that today. I will always be here. 3 p.m. Front door. He nodded. His eyes were wet. He hugged me again before he left at 6 p.m. He took the cinnamon rolls home in a Tupperware. He texted me when he got home. Mom didn't ask about them. Dad ate too. I texted back. Sweet pea, the cinnamon rolls were yours. Tell your father he is welcome at my house if he can sit at the same table I am sitting at without arranging the seating chart. Cassius sent back a single thumbs up. Calliope called me on Sunday evening. I let it go to voicemail. Mum, I don't know what happened last night. I have been thinking about it all weekend. I think there was a misunderstanding. I should not have said what I said about the bonus that was sloppy of me. I admit that. But the way you spoke to me in front of Reagan's family was, Mom, can we please talk, please? I noted she had said sloppy. I noted she had not said, I am sorry, I invented a financial fiction in order to invoice you for my anniversary dinner. I noted she had moved immediately to discussing the way I spoke to her, which is the standard rhetorical pivot of a person who has just been described accurately and is trying to recenter the conversation around her own feelings. I deleted the voicemail. She called twice more on Monday morning. I did not answer. At 5:14 p.m. on Monday, Eustacia called me. Catherine, the papers were filed at 4:47 p.m. The closing is complete. As of this moment, Calliope is no longer the contingent beneficiary of the Hollyhock Street property. Cassius is. The change is recorded with the county and registered with the trust. It cannot be reversed except by you, in writing, in my office, with documentation. I closed my eyes. Eustacia, yes. Sebastian would have liked you very much. Catherine, Sebastian and I worked together for 31 years. He used to tell me, at the holiday parties, that the closest thing he had to a sister was his lawyer. I want you to know that. I was his family too, in our own way. And I have been waiting 6 years to make him a final phone call on your behalf. Eustacia, yes. Will you have dinner with me on Thursday? Catherine, I will. Pick the place. I am buying. Not Vegas. She laughed. Not Vegas. That night, I sat in Sebastian's reading chair with the small notebook. I had started keeping the night of the dinner, and I wrote one line. They made me pay for the celebration. So I made them face the closing papers, the wall Sebastian built in 2017, which I finally learned to lean against, and which stood, in the end, exactly as tall as he had asked for it to be built. Then I closed the notebook, and I drank my tea, and I slept the way a woman sleeps when she has finally allowed her dead husband to be right about the daughter he had quietly been protecting her from for the last 6 years of his life, and the next 6 years of hers.